Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. Well, I'm sitting here today with Tom Llewellyn. Tom is a Tacoma author. We're going to talk about his books and all that. But Tom, before we start talking about your books, because that's the primary focus today, the other thing, and I didn't know this, when I reached out to you about being on the podcast was because of your latest book. I saw the cover, caught my eye, sounded cool. I didn't know that you are part of Beautiful Angle. That's correct. So in 30 seconds, why did you guys start that?
Oh, Beautiful Angle, just real quickly, is a street art project in Tacoma, and it's letterpress posters that we make about once a month, maybe 10 times a year, and hang up around town. And my partner in that, Lance Kagi, and I have been doing it for 21 years, and we've, even before that, we'd done a lot of creative projects together. We'd done some art together, and we'd been in a band for 7 years, and then he got really into letterpress. He's a graphic designer and I'm a writer. So, and we both said, geez, we should do posters together. We were big fans of street art, so we kind of wanted to start our own. And as simple as that, that's why. I mean, the other reason is there's no paying client involved. And when you take money out of the equation, you get to do whatever you want. So that's what we do. We just make posters about whatever we feel like making them about, and it's gathered a really strong fan base, and it's just been a joy to do.
Yeah, I know. When I was living in Tacoma, the last time I was living in Tacoma, I grew up there, but so that predates your whole Beautiful Angle thing. But when I was living in Tacoma as an adult, there was always buzz on the street when a new poster dropped. So that's kind of cool. So I look forward to getting both of you back on to talk about that.
Would love to do that.
Perfect. All right. So today, though, I'm going to kind of set the table a little bit, and then you're going to take over. So you grew up in the Redondo, Tacoma area, Federal Way, area. You went to the University of Washington. So I have to ask, was it painful to watch? I don't know if you're a sports fan. I guess you are. You're wearing a Rangers cap, but I mean, was it painful to watch? I mean, or is it too soon to jab you?
Oh, so painful, man. I'm telling you, it killed me. I mean, we had such a good season, and then the game just fell apart in the national championship against Michigan, who's been a long time, decades long rival of mine, which I remember. I mean, I go back all the way to I think I was 12 years old or something when we beat them with Warren Moon as our quarterback in the Don James era. And then to lose that game, and then to have our new exciting head coach, Kalen DeBoer, just abandon us like the next day, for Alabama was just, it was just this 1-2 punch that just killed so many Husky fans, myself included.
So I went to Central, so I can root for the Huskies whenever I wish. I can be a bandwagon. I can jump on the Cougar bandwagon. I can jump on the Husky bandwagon. I got autographed Husky. I got an autographed Warren Moon football helmet behind me. I've got some Cougar helmets behind me. So I can, I'm a fair weather fan. But does it hurt, or is it some small consolation that he went to Alabama?
Better Alabama than other places. It's Alabama's no one we ever consider. And, the Crimson Tide, a huge, is there a more renowned football program in the U.S.? Probably not.
They're certainly iconic.
The part that just creeps me out of this and the kind of, dissolution of the Pac-12 is just that college football at least had the appearance of some sort of purity. And now it just feels like it's all about money. It's AAA football, right? It's just one step down from the NFL, and it seems like it's all about the money. I mean, the amount of money Kalen DeBoer is going to get as a head coach is just, I don't know, man. It says a weird, creepy thing about our national values that, future archaeologists are going to look back and and think it's bizarre how much we pay these guys who play games. But
Absolutely.
I still watch, and
Yeah.
I'm a huge baseball fan, and same issues there. But I love following baseball. So
Cool. Well, we could go down the whole. I've got over off my left. I've got original box seats from Cheney Stadium that were brought
nice.
up that came from Seals Stadium in San Francisco when Ben Cheney built the ballpark in '60. I've got Tacoma Giants jerseys. I've got Tacoma Giants hats. I have autographed team balls from the '60s.
Wow.
My first baseball memory is my grandfather yelling at me to pay attention. I was going to get hit in the head with a foul ball at a Twins game, Tacoma Twins game, and anyway. So we could not even talk about your books. We could just talk Tacoma sports, and we kind of have a good time.
Scott, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of we'll do that again. But
all right.
So the last piece here about the UW though. So you went and you were in creative writing,
mm-hmm.
and you're a fiction author, but you have a day job. So what did the creative writing program prepare you for?
Yeah, I had so many friends who were like, "So you're going to be, you're going to be working at Starbucks, or you're going to be saying, would you like fries with that?" After I graduated with my English degree, and I definitely took me a few years to sort of earn my way, but I've made my living as a writer my entire adult life in one form or another. I pay the bills doing marketing, writing. Mm-hmm. I oversee brand and thought leadership for an investment company in the Seattle area. And the skill set's the same. You're still telling stories. If you're telling a story about, your exposure to, small cap equities, or you're telling a story about a girl in who moves into a guild hall of metal workers, the same principles apply. You're still trying to capture them in the first, mm-hmm. You're trying to set up a great story and you're trying to pay it off.
Gotcha.
So I love working in the skill set. I love just kind of soaking in that.
That's awesome that you've been able to, follow your passion that way. So once again, you kind of grew up the Federal Way area, you went up to Seattle for college. Why'd you move to Tacoma? I mean, most of us, I grew up in Tacoma. I could not wait to leave. I moved back because my son came to live with me. Mm-hmm. At that time, I lived up in the Stadium District. I had a great time in Tacoma as an adult. I did not enjoy living in Tacoma in the 60s and 70s. I'm a little older than you, so you get that. But you chose to move. You went to school in Seattle. What made you come back? Because you've been in Tacoma, over about 25 years or so, right?
Yeah, close to 30.
Okay, close to 30.
Actually, it's slightly over 30.
Okay.
If I'm completely honest, the reason I moved to Tacoma was cheap housing. My wife and I were looking for a place to live, and we're like, anywhere but Tacoma. And our realtor was like, "You are broke. You don't have enough money to live anywhere else. You should just go look at a house in Tacoma." And at the time, housing in Tacoma was so affordable. It is definitely not anymore.
Right. Well,
but
yeah.
Well, compared to the national average, it's significantly higher, and starter house in Tacoma is about $500,000 now, which is insane. Just kind of unbelievable, right? And but as soon as we moved in, it just clicked with us. I kind of have always had a bit of a chip on my shoulder kind of a guy. Okay. I just have sort of a gritty working, I come from kind of a working class family, and it was such a good fit for me. It's really, I'm an artsy guy too. So the arts community here is so easy to get involved with. Mm-hmm. The thing that I always say is the big gift of Tacoma is that it needs you. It needs people to love it. And I think if people are really honest of what they want in life, it's to be needed. I think that's that purpose thing is what really feeds most of us. And to have a city that needs you, I think it's a gift.
Okay. We're going to weave Tacoma in and out because your books also are set. They take place in Tacoma.
Yeah, for that same reason. But yeah, we can talk about that as you see fit.
So I was exposed to you because I don't know how I saw it on Facebook. I don't know if your publisher's running ads. I don't know if you were running an ad. We are not connected on Facebook. And I see this this cover for the 5 Impossible Tasks of Edin Smith, and it caught my eye. I was like, that's a cool cover. That's cool. Hey, this guy's in Tacoma. What? I had no idea about that. This was, I believe it's your 5th book, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, and your books are taking, you're setting them in Tacoma. I'm intrigued by that. We're out talking about Washington State, but Tacoma gets a lot of our attention too. Can you walk me through? I have this romanticized version of authors that they sit in a coffee shop, or they sit in a dark, not dark room, but a quiet space, and they tap away on their keyboard, or maybe you're writing out longhand. But what's the technical process that you work through when you're, after you've already, and we're going to come back to, I want to talk about how you get your ideas, but I want to talk about how do you put quote unquote words on paper?
Yeah, my words are always on screen. I barely know how to write longhand. Honestly, if I have to write more than 10 words, I will type it and print it out. My fingers don't connect to my brain unless they're on a keyboard. If we ever move into a post-keyboard world, that would terrify me.
My problem is I can write, but I can't read what I write. I mean, it's so bad. I can read, but my writing is so atrocious that I have to type. So you type everything.
I type everything,
do you work from a studio? Do you work wherever you are? What's your workflow?
I work wherever I am. Absolutely. It's wherever I am. I have a home office that I didn't have until COVID started. And then I took over a room because I was working from home full time there for a couple of years. So I write in here, but most of my writing happens wherever I can jam it in. I'm more productive when I'm busy. I don't know why. If I'm on vacation, I hardly write anything. I write better if I'm trying to cram it in around the edges. So honestly, my most productive writing space over the last 15 years has been on the 590, which is the Sound Transit Express bus between Tacoma and Seattle. And it's a great place to write for me. It's total downtime, and it has enough activity on it. I like coffee shops too. I have a friend who's a poet, and he likes to write at coffee shops. His name is Timothy McNeely, and he says that it has just enough activity for my brain to push against. Okay. And I love that. I love that kind of description. It's just right for me. So if I'm on a bus or in a coffee shop, there's just enough kind of buzz and hum to keep me keep my mind from straying. And but I'll write, sitting on the couch. I can edit, just kind of whenever. If I'm writing a rough draft or something that really needs a lot of attention, I need a kind of a decent chunk of time, at least an hour of kind of uninterrupted time. And the bus is about an hour each way, so it works really well for me. I've kind of come to love the 590. I feel like I should do an ad for SoundTrans and say, here's the 4 books I've written while commuting.
So you've written 4 of your books were done literally while commuting?
I don't know if it's that many exactly, but it's been a lot. Yeah, it's been a lot.
So is it safe to say the bulk of your work has been done on Sound Transit?
I think that's probably safe to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna put you on the spot. This is a question I normally ask later in the conversation, but we're gonna get this one going first. So you mentioned coffee shops because I kind of led you into it because that's kind of my thing. I need to know, in your opinion, where's a great coffee shop in Tacoma?
Bluebeard is my go-to coffee shop. It's on the corner of 6th Avenue and State Street.
Yep, right next to Jason Lee Middle School.
Yeah, which is now called Hilltop Heritage. But
is it? Okay.
Yeah, they changed the name. Part of this changing the name, Jason Lee was apparently not a good guy.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay.
Yep. So anyway, right. But yeah, Bluebeard. They roast their own coffee right there. It's just got a really good vibe. It's a big funky space. You can get a seat somewhere. And
so, what's your go-to coffee drink?
It's either just a shot of espresso and a glass of soda water, or just black drip coffee.
So simple, a purist, if you will. Love
Yeah, the older I get, the more I like espresso. Is sort of the sipping whiskey of coffee. It's strong, and
it. Mm-hmm.
so I like that.
Awesome. All right. The Five Impossible Tasks of Edin Smith takes place in Tacoma. Where did you get the inspiration for the book?
I think I got it from a lot of places, but the original idea was I can't remember who I was in a conversation with, but it was this idea of, if you think about, so the book is set in what is, for all intents and purposes, an old folks' home for metal workers. And I was having a conversation with someone about, these great children's books, or young adult books or even adult books of, like, you think of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or the Harry Potter series, or even Lord of the Rings or Narnia, that these books that have this world that's so desirable that you almost love the world more than you love the individual stories, and you want to return to the Chocolate Factory or Middle Earth or Hogwarts. And it was just this idea of sort of a challenge for my own brain of, like, what if you set the book in a place where kids really don't have any desire to go, like an old folks home or a nursing home.
Okay.
And so that was this idea. And then of course it morphed from that. It's like, okay, how do you take this old folks home and turn it into, still into a magical place and so it ends up that the reader does hopefully want to go there because it's full of this mastery of the metal craft that verges on the magical, and these elderly characters that end up being, instead of being boring, really colorful, and the building itself is this very much a world within itself. That was the original inspiration, and I struggled with that for quite a while, and frankly really struggled to get it moving. And then realized that if this book was full of old people, I could fill it with my own old people. And so I changed all the characters from these sort of generic people right out of my imagination into actually giving them the names and personalities of my own late relatives of mine who I loved, who are no longer with us. So my great aunties and uncles and aunts and uncles, and realized that as soon as I did that, it was this realization of, like, oh, whenever I'm working on this book, I kind of get to have this delightful family reunion, and I get to have it on my own terms, right? I can put words into their mouths and actions into their mouths. So it's this sort of idealized family reunion. And boy, I just enjoyed so much spending time with these folks. So that was sort of how it came about.
That's very cool. So it's a work of fiction. I get that, but Tacoma, I know Tacoma. And if I had to make you say, where would this place physically have been? What neighborhood would you have put it in? I mean, where, like...
Oh, I can tell you exactly where it is.
Okay.
It's on North 10th and North I Street, which is the old Rust Mansion. If you remember the Rust Mansion,
yeah.
And that's the address. And I just drove past the Rust Mansion going, oh, look at this giant place with this huge round porch that kind of circles the building and these big columns. And so it definitely drifted from there. This building is much bigger than that. And it also has many, underground stories to it. But that's the address.
So where I was thinking, the building that I kind of assigned to it was the Document Museum by Wright Park.
Sure. Yeah, that would have been a good place too.
I don't know why, but that's kind of where my brain went. It would be a place like that.
Yeah.
But the Rust Mansion makes perfect sense. All right.
Yeah, no, that's a good location. I love that museum. But I think it's closing.
It's kind of what?
I believe I heard that it's that, and I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head, and I can't. But yeah, I believe it is closing.
I knew they had more than one location. I think they had a location like in Tennessee or something like that. So maybe they're consolidating. Interesting. I didn't even know, all my years of living there, the first 18 years of my life living there, I had no idea what that thing was. It was when I moved back somebody that I
The
worked with said, "Hey, have you ever
Carpellis
been there?"
Manuscript Museum.
Yeah.
Carpellis
What is
Manuscript
this?
Museum. Yeah.
Yeah, what is that place?
Yeah.
And I went in there, and it was a very cool experience. It's
Yeah.
a to me, it's an underappreciated asset that Tacoma has. All right, so the 5 impossible tasks. How did you go? Why 5? Why not 4? Why not 7? What was it, because you ran out of crazy things for her to do? Or I'm kidding, but what what was kind of the process there to lead you to these, and are they related to memories
Yeah.
of family in some way?
They're not, but the
Okay.
impossible tasks come from the 12 labors of Hercules. In fact, if they're each one is in my mind at least clearly associated with one of the labors of Hercules. There's the first task in the book is this: Edin has to do the dishes, which sounds like an incredibly menial task, but in this guild hall, she has to do them all in a day. And there's this room called dishes where there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dirty dishes stacked up that she has to wash in a day, and she ends up doing it in a very creative way. So it's sort of like the stables in the 12 tasks of Hercules, that Hercules ends up washing in a sort of creative way. And she has another task where she's battling these deadly birds, and that task is also right out of the 12 labors of Hercules, and they sort of go on that way. And the reason there's 5, I think, is just because that seemed about like the right amount to fit into a book that's about the right size. There's nothing more compelling or creative than that.
If you were to be tasked with one of those 5 tasks, which one would you want to do?
That's a good question. I don't know if I'm as creative or smart as the character Edin is in the book, but yeah, the dishes one seems like the least deadly, the one that's least likely to kill me. The tasks in the book have the book starts off with a sort of a genealogy of Edin's ancestors, and it basically tells the story of how they've all died trying to complete these tasks. So I think if I was really smart, I'd try to avoid them altogether.
Well, I understand, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Which one to you sounds the most like you? Like okay, I'm going to take the risk. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I think I'd probably try to figure out the dishes, just because I think it'd be the one least likely to kill me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Will there be a sequel? Is she going to have more adventures?
I hope so. That's actually not up to me. That's up to the publisher if they're willing to do this, and it's frankly determined by how well this first book sells. And if you ask me how well the first book is selling, I have no idea. It's publishing. From an author's point of view, is very much a black hole. Apparently, the selling process of wholesaling books and potentially buying them back from retailers means that getting numbers is something that happens, over like half of a year, as opposed to, we're used to having data at our fingertips anytime we want, but apparently the publishing and book selling process is too complex to make that happen. So I won't know how the book is selling for at least 6 months. And, but I have mapped out sort of in my mind, I have an idea of definitely turning this into a series. I set up a number of things in this book that would definitely feed into a series. So I have a lot of ideas in that sense.
Working with a publisher, do you as the author have any input as to where you're going to ask for the book to be placed? Like, for example, we were supposed to record this last week. We had some illness here in the house, but on Wednesday of last week, you did a book thing at King's Books there in Tacoma. Mm-hmm. Do you get to have any input and say, I'd like to have books, if King's is willing to carry it because I'm a local guy, can you help guide the placement, or are they the marketing experts?
I think they're the marketing experts, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're happy to send books wherever I can help sell them. So, and I'm sure I sell more books in Tacoma, probably primarily because of, as you mentioned, of my association with Beautiful Angle, which has a very strong fan base, which I'm not above exploiting, or I like to use the word leveraging because it sounds better, but totally trying to exploit that for however I can. So I tend to do really well in Tacoma just because Tacoma is such a great supportive community and they love to support their own folks. Outside of Tacoma, the publisher is much more likely to send me places. On my last book, I did a mini kind of book tour just right around the kind of I-5 corridor, Seattle to Everett sort of thing. And so I know I have a book signing in Redmond coming up in a couple months. I'm doing my first con, Norwest Con, which is a kind of fantasy and sci-fi book convention coming up this first quarter of the year as well. More and more these days, the promotion of books happens in a virtual space on things like this podcast or via blogs and via influencers on social and those sorts of things.
I'm going to drop a name. I see that they do. So on Explore Washington State, we have an events calendar across the entire state. So we try to promote events. So, if you're in Tacoma and you're looking for something to do, you can go to our website, look for it across the entire state. So it's pretty darn ambitious to try to think we can do that. But have you ever heard of Village Books and Paper in Bellingham?
I haven't off the top of my head, but I might have been there. I have been there. This is the one that's, is this the one that's in the Fairhaven neighborhood?
They have two. Yeah, they have two locations. Correct.
Yeah.
They have a lot, and I mean a lot, of author conversations. They're bringing authors in multiple times a week. So they've got an audience that's kind of primed to expect an author to show up. Bellingham's not too far to drive.
I would totally drive to Bellingham. What a great town. Yeah,
no, Bellingham's awesome. So you maybe add that to your list of possible places to go and talk. And I've seen events there with children's books authors. So I'm recommending it because I've never been there, but I'm recommending it because of the number of author events that they have. That seems to be like a focus of theirs.
Nice.
So they must have a good mechanism in place to promote the events.
Well, I'm a huge fan of the independent bookstores, and surprisingly, they just kind of seem to keep rolling, and I love that. I think I don't know if it's truer in the Pacific Northwest. I know we are the most readingest part of the country. Right. So I love that. And, these bookstores like King's Books in Tacoma just is a great place. We have a new High Voltage Books on 6th Avenue that is, seems to be doing really well. And like seeing a new bookstore open is just like, oh, how cool is that?
No, it's very, very, it's almost as exciting as a new vinyl record store.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think I warned you that my shows always bounce around a lot. So I'm not even going to push the clutch in. I'm just going to shift gears. I was listening to an interview you did earlier about your childhood, and you had a very conservative mother, but she would let you read whatever you wanted to read. So at a young age, you were reading Stephen King and all this. You mentioned Mad Magazine, which we're going to get along just great if you were reading Mad Magazine. And I didn't listen to all the episodes, so maybe you've already discussed this, but something that was brought up was liner notes, album liner notes, that you were reading those. As a kid, what were you listening to?
I was the youngest of 5, so I had 3 older brothers who were quite into music. My brother Dan, who now lives back on the East Coast, but he was a big influence on my musical taste. And his leaned towards classic rock. We now call it classic rock. Back then, you just called it rock. And so I still listen to the same stuff too. I just was listening to "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd, and I probably listened to that album 4 times this week. I'm a huge Led Zeppelin fan. Still consider them the greatest rock band ever. I listen to them all the time. In fact, they have a great new biography out just called Led Zeppelin. It's probably a year or two old now, but some shocking stuff. But I loved, and I loved to read all those those liner notes. So again, anything in that era, Cream and Blind Faith and Traffic and all those sort of bands. And one of the things you love about them is, like, especially reading the liner notes, like you would read Led Zeppelin. I mean, the liner notes from Pink Floyd. Then I'd go over to my cousin's house, and my cousin was listening to an Alan Parsons Project thing, and I was like, Alan Parsons, I know I've heard that name somewhere. Oh, he was the engineer on Dark Side of the Moon, because I was such a nerd about that stuff. And I think I bought my first turntable when I was 12 years old with my paper route and lawn mowing money. Okay. And I spent so much time sitting in my bedroom, turning records on the turntable, and just reading everything, the front and back of the cover and whatever was on the record sleeve inside. And I still do it. I mean, I still do it. I just recently got a new turntable, and I still buy records.
Okay. Do you? You're of a certain age. So I can remember when I got my first CD player. I was in college. Mm-hmm. I can remember I bought it in Yakima. Went to Budget Records and Tapes in Yakima. Bought 3 CDs that day. I can still remember exactly what 3 CDs they are. Can you remember the first CDs you bought?
I can't remember the first CDs I bought. I can remember the first vinyl I bought, which was Boston's first album, which I don't really think has aged all that well. But and I remember the first cassette tape I bought was Heavy Weather by Weather Report, which is still a great album. I just bought that on vinyl again recently. It's still so good. Jaco Pastorius on bass on that, and just tearing it up. And I don't remember the first CDs, but I do. I was really resistant to CDs because I had all my friends had moved on to CD players, and I was clinging to vinyl and going, no, vinyl's better. And then how frustrated I was to hear somebody play CDs, and I was hearing things that I'd never heard on vinyl, because you get more of the information, but less of the warmth. I think is sort of the idea.
Yeah, it's very they're very clinical, which is why I think we're going back to vinyl. So I will tell you the first 3 CDs I bought, because this kind of will give you a snapshot into my brain.
Yeah, let's hear
it. Donald Fagen's The Night Fly.
It's great. That's great. I love Steely Dan. I'm a huge Steely Dan fan.
One of my favorite. I mean, right there. Seen him multiple times. A lot of fun. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Mm-hmm. And Prince's Purple Rain.
I'm a huge Prince fan.
I know, but those are the 3 CDs I bring home with me to break in the inaugural CD player.
That's a good mix. 1999, I think, is a top 10 album of all time for me. So by Prince.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That was high school for me. I still listen to all 3 of those. I think The Night Fly for me probably edges out Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay.
But
that's cool.
But that's like saying, tacos or pizza. I mean, you can't go wrong with either.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. So Tacoma's music scene. Who were you a fan of? Who are you a fan of in the Tacoma music scene?
Well, Tacoma, I think if you think of Tacoma correctly, Tacoma is really designed as an incubator city, right? And I think we were comfortable with that idea. So, I'm a huge fan of Northwest music history, and in our Beautiful Angle project, we did a history of Tacoma music poster. So I know some of this stuff. So like Nirvana first played, I'm a huge Nirvana fan. I love, just what a great band. One of the greatest rock bands ever. And I'm not sure there's a greater Northwest band. And they first played under the name Nirvana in Tacoma. Chris
Oh,
Novoselic had a house in Tacoma when Dave Grohl joined the band. They first met in his backyard at a barbecue. Their main place to play was called, I can go on this for a while, Scott. It's
that's
called
okay.
Community World Theater, which is now
Off of 56th Street.
yeah, now it's a church. But
Yeah, that my
in fact, when they
my grandfather's sister owned that place as a movie theater in the
is
30s and 40s.
wow, is that
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah, that way
crazy.
back in the day. My
So your
grandfather
great
was
aunt.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So my
Yeah,
grandparents
the
my
crazy
grandparents had
fact
a house
is
right on 56th Street. You could see that theater from my grandparents' front yard.
that's so weird.
Yeah.
When Nirvana first played there under the name Nirvana, the person taking tickets at the door was Nico Case,
Really?
which is just a crazy sort of interconnection of, events. My
Oh wow.
favorite
Okay.
weird fact that most people don't know is that Loretta Lynn's first broadcast performance was from Tacoma. Buck Owens of Buck Owens and the
Yeah.
Buckaroo and the Bakersfield Sound and Hee Haw and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff was living in Tacoma at the time, and he did a radio program on a local radio station, and he did a talent show at a restaurant on South Tacoma Way called Steve's Gay 90s,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
and one of his sort of discoveries was this young woman who had moved up here with her husband. I think she was actually living in Bellingham at the time or somewhere up north, but she was coming down here to be on the Buck Owens' various programs and shows, and her name was Loretta Lynn. It's a pretty
Oh.
good claim to fame.
So, and you thought we were only going to talk about your book?
I know. I could talk about this stuff. This stuff's fascinating to me.
Are you currently in any process of another book that you're working on?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay. How many, I'll call them projects. How many projects do you work on simultaneously? Just one, or are you scribbling notes down or typing notes because you don't write, but you jotting notes on the computer down for multiple projects, or how's your brain work?
Yeah, messily. I'm constantly jotting notes down. I have big file folders full of just things called book ideas. I'm currently working on, I just sent a completed notes on a manuscript on a book called Black String to my agent, which actually is a book that was published in a earlier form only in Germany and the Netherlands, but we've never sold it in the United States.
Wow.
So we've done some rewrites, and we're trying. She's supposed to come back to me with some edits, and we're going to pitch that again. And it's a book that is sort of based on string theory and the myth of Theseus, who goes into the maze, fights the Minotaur in Greek mythology. He finds his way through the maze with a ball of string, and or finds his way out of the maze by following the ball of string. So I really like this story. I hope something happens with it. And then I'm working on another book that's actually set in my mind where Hilltop Heritage Middle School is, but in the book, the middle school is built on a cemetery where they were not allowed to remove any of the graves or the headstones. So there's headstones and mausoleums popping up through all the floorboards and on the soccer field and things like that. The working title is the Edna J. Krebs Memorial Cemetery and Middle School. So those are the two that I'm actively working on. And then I have a bunch of like half-finished things that I tend to come back to things. Like I'll get it a certain level, then my mind shifts onto something else. But then I usually come back around and try to finish something.
Each project's different. I get that, but what's the approximate? Like, let's use the 5 Impossible Tasks of Edin Smith. How long did that take you from starting to actually work on it? Not just the idea, because the idea may have been sitting in the shelf on your mind for months and years. But when you started like putting fingers to keyboard to the book being completed, as far as your role, How long is that process for that book?
I can get pretty specific on that one because I went back and looked at my my file folder on my Mac, and the earliest kind of serious beginning on it was late 2017, early 2018. So if we just call it January of 2018, and I finished edits on it in fall of 2023. So almost 6 years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time, and probably 5 of those years is the editing process. I had a good rough draft. I think we had a contract on the book 3 years before publication, and then it was 3 additional years of editing and rewrites between then and the time it came out.
As the creator whose words are being edited, is that easy for you to watch somebody else make a change, or do you are there times when you're like fighting them, going, no, that has to stay, you're changing the message too much? Or how's that for you as a creative?
Yeah, the way it works is they rarely change anything on their own, but they'll say, I think you should change this, and they let me actually do it. But they get very strongly opinionated on, you need to change this sort of thing. I used to be resistant to it. I'm lucky enough my 2 primary editors is my agent, the esteemed Abigail Simoon from Red Fox Literary, who's been my agent for forever. And then Kelly Lohman at Holiday House, who is the publisher of this book. And they're both just seasoned, just brilliant editors. And they're annoyingly right. You're just like, and the thing it's people who are young authors or haven't been through this before find it incredibly shocking. Of like, they'll make these requests of like, I don't think this chapter works. I think you should get rid of this chapter. And you're thinking, if I get rid of this chapter, it's going to change these 4 chapters before it and 20 chapters after it. And they're like, yeah, I know. Take 6 months and work on that. And you're like, 6 months? I want to be done with this thing, right. But they're right. They're just consistently right. This is what they do for a living, and they just have a really good ear for what works and what doesn't. And I honestly, I used to loathe the editing process, and now I've totally turned that corner, and I love it. And I mean, that's what writing is. Real writing is editing. It's that polish and the ability. The thing I like about it is when you write the first draft, it happens, for me at least, it happens in a very linear process, right? You kind of go from start to finish. And then when you're editing, you sort of become like a god, and you can step out of linear time and space and move wherever you want. The characters are still stuck in their linear story, but you're kind of dipping in and out. And so it changes the way you read too. So if I read another book, like somebody will read Harry Potter or something and go, oh, I can't believe this thing with Voldemort happens here in book 3, but they set it up in book 1. And you're like, that was just editing. That's all fake. It's all just, it's like foreshadowing. If you think an author is great at foreshadowing, it's like a kind of a cheap magic trick. It seems brilliant and seamless to the reader, but for the writer, it was this, it took them a year to go through and figure it out. But it's so easy to go back and add something on page 3 that looks like it's now, magically paid off on page 350. But you open up the Word document and stick it in there. It's just, there's nothing to it.
That's interesting. So let me ask you this: Does working with the editors on your fiction work, has that, in your opinion, paid positive dividends in your professional writing? Are you more open to the editing now for on the corporate side, if you will?
I think I would honestly say that it's happened the other way around, that I was open to the editing process because I was already, before I published my first book, I was probably 15 years into business writing.
Okay.
And if you've ever done any sort of, like, I was an ad copywriter, I was a trade journalist for a while, and a marketing writer, and you're just used to having brutal clients, whether it's somebody in your own company or somebody at another company, just saying, "Oh, I don't like this. This isn't working at all." And you never
And
get
maybe not
something.
knowing why, not
Maybe
necessarily
not.
being correct either. Yeah.
But you just realize, oh, they're the ones signing my paycheck. They get to say whatever they want. And you develop this really thick skin. So I think it was a huge bonus for me as an author. And I think my editors and agents were delighted to say, oh, this is somebody who doesn't get their feelings hurt when I tell them to change something, because I was so used to it by then.
Okay. Well, to respect your time, and we could go on and on, because we could be going back to talk music or sports or Tacoma in general. So I got a couple of things I want to make sure we touch on. Your bio talks about you grew up in a house with frozen toilets.
I did indeed.
That's a pretty interesting visual. Now, you also state that you grew up in a waterfront home, right?
That's right.
Okay. Let's set the stage here. Back in the day, waterfront in Puget Sound wasn't all that desirable. It wasn't like we might think about it today, like, ooh, waterfront.
Hard to imagine, isn't it?
I know, it's very hard. But you grew up in that. But I actually, there's a connection here that I need you to explain to me. Is that what went wrong, so that you are actually doing like polar plunges into Puget Sound? I saw a picture of you on Facebook with a friend of yours, and all I could think of is, what's wrong with this guy? I'm teasing, but
yeah,
really, what's wrong with you?
I go in the Sound early in the morning too. It's usually right around sunrise, or even before or right after, depending on the time of the year. About 3 days a week with my friend Todd Gainey, and we both grew up on the water way back in the day. Both of us grew up in the 70s and early 80s, I guess. And I just think that salt water gets in your blood. And my favorite thing about going in 3 days a week is just that I'm in the water. And I grew up as a kid, swimming only in the summertime, but swimming in this cold water, and it just never bothered me. And there's all sorts of sort of pseudo science saying all these kind of health benefits of this activity. I don't really buy into any of that stuff. I just do it because I like it. And people say, oh, it's supposed to be good it's supposed to increase your metabolism or help with your mitochondrial health or some BS like that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I like doing it.
I have a friend that lives in Tacoma who has a cold plunge tank at his house now, and he's going in over like near Owens Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't talked to him early this year to like ask him what the heck is wrong with him. But where do you guys go? Where do you do your we
go
at?
I mean, it's the same stretch of water that Owen Beach is on. But we're down in closer to the Old Town neighborhood, which we go in at Jack Hyde Park.
Okay.
Which, if you're in Tacoma, if you're facing the water, it's between the Chinese Reconciliation Park and the Northern Fish Company. It's just a little stretch of nice beach there. So, and there's a lot of people who go in right there.
And how long are you staying in?
10 to 15 minutes usually. We went in.
Really?
Yeah, we went in on January, I guess, what was it? January 8th or something like that, which was like the coldest day in the last 30 years or whatever. And it was about 16 degrees out, and we were only in about 4 minutes. And it was, honestly, the water was so cold that day. You didn't even feel it as a temperature. You felt it it literally was like stepping into pain. It was so cold. It was just unbelievable how cold it was. So that one I didn't
for being consistent.
Yeah, that was really the only reason for it.
All right. I'm going to get to Tacoma around lunchtime. Where's a place in Tacoma I should grab lunch these days?
I think you should go to the Red Hot on 6th Ave, and you should get a hot dog there. and they have a great beer selection. If you're a beer drinker, they have the best tap list in Tacoma. You can see some of
Really?
our beautiful angle posters there. It's the only place my wife and I go to often enough where they actually say our names when we go in. So it's a place that likes its regulars. So
Okay.
that would be my
Okay.
recommendation.
That's solid. That's solid. When you're not working and when you're not writing and when you're not cold plunging, what do you like to do? What do you and the family, what do you guys do? What's fun for you?
My family and I mean, my wife and I like to go to movies. We love to eat out in Tacoma. Tacoma just has a great community. So we like to hang out with friends. I'm a musician too. I love to play guitar with friends, and I'm probably driving my wife crazy most evenings, just sitting in our dining room playing my acoustic guitar. And she's like, I love that you're playing, honey, but could you play something else? You're starting to drive me nuts because I'll just play the same
Are you
little
playing
riff.
originals or are you doing covers?
I'm just kind of mostly just noodling, but yeah, I like to learn songs, and the internet makes that so much easier. I love the YouTube guitar lessons on, you know, how to play Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, and you're like, oh, I've heard this song 10,000 times, and you're like, yes, that's actually really easy to play. These sort of weird realizations.
Such a song that's so being covered by everybody these days. It's kind of funny.
Exactly.
That one's kind of bubbled back. If you were going to go out and see live music in Tacoma, where's a venue you're liking these days?
Well, I'm an old guy, so I don't like to stay up late. I mean, I love to see live shows, but if you go to like a great Seattle club or something, and it says the doors open at 8:30, that means that the headliner that you're there to see doesn't come out until 10:30 or 11. Right. I just can't do it. So we've been blessed with McMinimans in Tacoma at the old Elks Lodge, and it's a beautiful site. And they have a space there called the Spanish Ballroom, and the shows usually start promptly at 8 p.m.
Isn't that nice?
It's so nice, man. Oh my gosh. It's just the greatest. And you look around and there's a bunch of old hairs, and folks folks my age. And I don't mind that.
I get it.
I like it.
Yeah. The last show, my wife and I love to go see live music. And the last show we saw was over at Slim's Last Chance in Seattle.
Okay.
And I was up past my bedtime. And we, because we when we come over to the west side to see live music, we're staying in a hotel. We're not going over. I used to drive a lot. I could go, I'll just go home. No, we don't do that. But Slim's, it was a lot of fun, but I was feeling old.
Man,
really old.
That's too hard.
But
my favorite band that I've seen in the last couple of years live, and frankly, I don't know if they work not live. It's called Polyrhythmics, and they're like a funk jazz band.
Yeah,
and it's only instrumental, which is not something I would necessarily go out of my way. But they have another show coming up in March at the Spanish Ballroom in Tacoma, and they just fill the place, standing room only. And as soon as the first song starts, the whole crowd is just bouncing up and down. It's just the most, you cannot sit still when you're listening to this music. It's so good.
And the Spanish Ballroom is a wonderful space. All right. So I got a question. I got one last interview question. This is the most important question I ask all my guests. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
You have to answer it. Cake or pie, and why?
I'm so much a pie guy and not a cake guy. I don't really even like cake very much. I don't understand the appeal to it. I'm always confused when they have like, it's somebody's birthday, let's buy him a cake. Like, why cake? Whoever decided that cake was the right thing? Pie is so much better. It's like, if cake is like all the bready part and this little bit of filling, and pie is all the filling part with a little bit of bread. And I'm a huge fruit pie guy, like blackberry, cherry, apple pie. My wife also happens to be a really good pie maker, and she makes great crust, and she's also a obsessive blackberry picker. She makes her own blackberry jelly, and so I always get at least 3 or 4 amazing blackberry pies a year.
All right.
There's
what's interesting. I stole this question from another.
It's good.
Yeah, it's cool. And some people get really like I've asked them to pick which is their favorite child or which arm they're going to cut off. I mean, and other people are more like you, who just very adamant about cake or pie.
And if you tally it up, who's winning, cake or pie?
So one of the things I need to do is go back. And one of the things I want to do is we've done almost 300 episodes now, and we haven't always asked this question, but we've asked this question for a good 150 episodes. I need to go back. My gut is telling me that pie is in the lead.
That's good. That gives me hope for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I could help. No, it's pie is and honestly, my gut is telling me that pie is substantially in the lead. But that could be just selective memory on my part.
Yet, if you go to a birthday party, it's always cake. If you go to a wedding, it's cake. My friend Ed, actually, when he got married, he was in my same way of thinking, and he, instead of having a wedding cake, they just had a selection of great pies. It was like, this is so smart. I had so much respect for that decision. Good job, Ed.
There you go. Shout out to Ed. All right. So where can people find your books? Where can people find out more about you and what you do? And where should we send them to?
Sure. You can buy the book, any of my books, but especially this latest one, The 5 Impossible Tasks of Edin Smith, published by Holiday House, anywhere books are sold. So you can, if your local indie bookstore doesn't own it or doesn't have it in stock, they can order it. Yeah, you can certainly buy it on Amazon, but support your local bookstore. You can find me on the socials. I'm at Tommy Lew, at TOMMYLLEW on Twitter. I think Tommy Lew is also my Instagram handle if you want to follow me there. And I have a blog, just TommyLew.com if you want to follow me there.
Awesome. Anything that we didn't touch on today that you'd like to wrap this up with?
I don't think so, Scott. I mean, I think you did a great job, and I love this theme of exploring Washington State, and I love the way you're doing it through people and their individual experiences. So thanks for what you're doing, man.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with me today, man. I really had a good time, and I'm looking forward to having you back on.
All right. Cool. Me too.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.